And we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, this is Amplify Your Impact, which is a podcast show of extreme rawness. We're going to talk about that in a second. But as you can see, I've already lost my voice this morning. We just got ghosted, Michelle and I, on some guests that were coming on. Hopefully we'll still be able to bring them on. I'm not going to throw them under the bus or anything like that. I get it. Life happens, but the show must go on is basically why we're here. So Michelle is now the person that we are interviewing. I'd like to welcome Michelle Birsky, but really quickly, welcome to Amplify Your Impact. The point of this show is it's for entrepreneurs who are really out to change the world with their purpose-driven businesses while they increase their wealth and are balancing their own personal health along the way. The warning that we always say at the start of the show is that real-life entrepreneurship is raw, and so is this show. So we record live. It is unedited and unfiltered. Activate your mula bandha and let's get going. I'm Josh Biro. Today's guest, as I've already announced, is Michelle. Michelle is, in fact, my executive assistant, which is the nerdiest title and makes me feel like a pretentious asshole every time I say it. But it's the most accurate as well, because let's be honest, and Michelle, I'm sure can pipe in on this if we need to. I can't schedule anything. I don't even have lunch half the time unless Michelle puts it on my calendar. So that's how we have a relationship. But way more importantly than that, I want to talk about Michelle and Kevin music. Basically, I think that's sort of like under your own brand, the name. But I think one of the reasons that I was really excited to work with Michelle and have her come on our team, beyond the fact that she clearly knows what the hell she's doing and is a lovely person, was I'm very often looking for people who have passion around something, because I feel like in life in general, it's when we fall into these moments of apathy or we don't have direction or vision or a passion about something, it doesn't matter what the passion is, that we kind of float and we're less impactful in general across the rest of our life as well. So I really appreciated that about your sort of vision and what you shared. So maybe, Michelle, we're winging it right now, but let's kick off there. Give us the quick backstory, like who are you, where are you from, what's up with this music stuff? How did we get here?
Cool. So I'm Michelle Birsky. I am originally from Connecticut, grew up there, lived in New York for most of my 20s, where I pursued music in the indie band world. I was performing and touring and playing shows and trying to become the next Maggie Rogers. I don't know if you even know who that is, but she's a cool singer-songwriter. And it was getting increasingly more difficult with every passing year. And I was running myself into the ground and working bartending jobs and nannying and doing whatever I could to make money while I pursued the music stuff. And a friend asked me to score her short film. So I'd never done this before. I'd never written music for a movie before, but I couldn't say no. I almost said no, but I didn't, thank God. And winged it. And it ended up being the best experience of my life. And it completely changed the way I thought about music. I absolutely love doing it, writing to a story to help amplify someone else's story versus writing my own music that I hoped people would like. It was a very different experience. So I started doing more of it. And eventually that led me to moving to LA a few years ago. And my partner, Kevin, and I scored together. We came together. He's also has a band called Cape Francis. I had a band called Birch. We came together to score this big movie last year called Mother Android, and it came out on Hulu last December. And that was a life-changing experience as well, because it was our first, studio film. And now we've got the next one that we're doing right now. That's a horror film and trying to get into the TV space. But yeah, it's been quite the journey, and it's also only just begun in so many ways as well.
I love it. I have so many more questions immediately, but this is the Maggie Rogers we're talking about.
This is Maggie Rogers. She looks
okay, if you can't see because you're listening on this podcast, we just brought up on screen Maggie Rogers' Instagram. Go look at it. Here's the most important question, and I think this suffices for our random question. We usually draw a question from the hat to see what we get. Will you cut your hair like this? Okay, just checking. I have no opinion on it either way. Just curious if that's like a thing that you have to do when you are a singer-songwriter with people. Probably at some point.
Well, I used to have blue hair. So
I mean, that
I did that
makes
for a
sense.
while. So gotta do something with
Like
your
blue long hair?
Yeah. I should find a picture.
You should find a picture of that. We should definitely put that on the screen. Okay. Well, I think if I'm hearing you correctly and interpreting what you're saying, like the impact that it's had on you as an entrepreneur, and this sort of, because it kind of came about organically that you're doing scoring by the sounds of it.
It did.
I have some other friends who have been in and out of the music industry. One of which recently we were talking about, like him being signed on and like it kind of being a big deal, and like he like couldn't cut it. That's his words, not mine. Because it just really is a grind. But what you're highlighting to me is how much more opportunity with that type of talent that there is. And I always think about like little videos we put out just to run, like even a Facebook ad. Music changes the vibe of the video in like, it's the most impactful piece to change like the emotional feel of it.
Yeah.
But tell me more about on the impact front, like why now outside of you is this the thing that you should be doing? Like, what are you on a mission to change and do and build, you know, in doing this? Or is it just because it's fun and you like music?
It started because it's fun. And it was the only thing I ever wanted to do. And I remember as a kid, like looking at the people around me who were adults and working. And I was like filled with panic because I could not see myself going to an office. I just couldn't see myself doing it. And like going to the cubicles, or my dad was a chiropractor and he had his own practice. And he was like, you could, follow in my footsteps, family business. And I couldn't see myself doing that. And the only thing I cared about was music. It was the only thing I wanted to do, but I didn't see a path forward. I had no examples in my life. So now that I have found music and it's fun, but I have redirected my purpose in a way by looking at like the landscape of Hollywood and the world and realizing that like, I know that I am a white woman. I am not a minority in so many ways, but in this industry, there are like a handful of female composers. Like I think the statistic in like 2020 or something was, I think it was like 5% of all of the top box office movies. So like the ones that are actually making money, 5% were scored by women. And it's just like this gross statistic that like is somehow in 2022 still a thing that, women are just highly, highly underrepresented. Black women are even more underrepresented. And it's just something that by the time I'm done here, I want to be 50-50. Like, I just want, so I don't know how exactly I can individually change it, but just by doing the thing, at least that adds one more person into the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I guess my follow-up question would be, tell me more about that. Like in your experience, and clearly this is not your unique profession of research necessarily, but you literally are in the epicenter of the industry and are doing it yourselves. Why aren't there more women doing it?
I think a lot of it has to do with what we value in like girls at, the younger, when you are young, and I grew up as a musician doing music, it is a boys' club in a lot of ways. And I think that is changing a lot, luckily. And there's a conversation about it now, but like, at least when I was growing up, it was cool for me to do like chorus, and being a singer was a thing that was like socially acceptable. But the second I started playing guitar, I wasn't welcomed into like the guitar community or like even like the band community. It was very much like there's a culture, and I think adults perpetuate it, or at least they did in the 90s and early 2000s, of, propping up boys for being good at technical things and propping up girls for being good at the showboat things. So like, under that category, singing and performing was propped up as a girl if you're doing musical theater or, any kind of like singing. But then the tech stuff, the music production, that is such a huge part of this job. Like, I never was steered in that direction. And if I wandered in that direction, I felt immediately like cast aside. It wasn't a community that I was welcomed into. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. And then the other thing is, the people who are at the top of these industries, the composers, for example, is completely male dominated. The top, you think of composer, you think of Hans Zimmer, you think of like these great big, like John Williams, these like old white males who are incredibly talented and doing amazing work, but like they're the gatekeepers in so many ways. And people do want to work with who they are comfortable with and who they know. And there's not a lot of, I don't know, there's a ton of issues that we can go into, but like, I have worked for a composer before who made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And like, the only way for me to learn from him was to go at night to see him because he was nocturnal, because he's a genius. And
Right.
yeah, and I just like, I went once and it was 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. alone in his apartment. And he asked me why my shirt buttoned down the back and how I could get that shirt off if it buttoned down the back. And like, that was what he, like, alone.
Fuck.
It was one of those moments where I was like, I'm in danger, I'm in danger, I'm in danger. And nothing happened past that, but I didn't go back to learn from him again because I felt terrified too. And
of course,
that is so common, so common. I've heard from so many other women who are like, and I think about like, I was 23, like, what could I have learned from this guy? Like, he's a big dude in this industry. He knows what he's doing. He could have taught me a lot. And I missed that opportunity to learn and be a protege because it's not safe. Like,
right. Yeah. You also missed the opportunity to get mentally fucked up by an asshole.
Right. It's just like,
I mean,
yeah. So that's why.
Man, that's holy shit. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, because the thing that I find curious, I don't know this industry, so I'm speaking just purely off the cuff here, right? It's like, the gatekeeper ideology is fascinating because it's almost like this self-perpetuating thing where if you just have a bunch of any one type of person doing it, then anyone outside of that just organically wouldn't quote culturally fit into it. So like there really has to be a big momentum push externally. It's not going to be as internal, I think. So that's why your mission's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
I really take to heart a lot of what you're saying too. I have 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I was thinking like most people don't know this, but way back in the baby Josh days, I played trombone because I was the only instrument I could make a sound with when we had to do band. But like, I actually really enjoyed playing music. Mm-hmm. I played in some pretty high level jazz bands or whatever. But then you're right though, like there were more women playing in certain musical things I was in, definitely in anything theater related. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you went over into like more band level, like personal bands, drummers, stuff like that, then it was way uncommon to see a woman there. And I never thought of like that culturally we've all directed that to happen to some extent as well.
Yeah. And like
the same things in reverse. Like if you joined like a show tunes thing as a dude, like other people, other dudes, me growing up, other dudes straight up made fun of you. You got called gay or whatever, like immediately, which is the dumbest thing ever. It doesn't even make any sense. But we culturally have like created that divide. So maybe that's what we're gonna solve for here.
It's crazy.
Okay. So for those people who don't know, can you walk me through like, you've got this new project, it's a horror movie, which makes me really intrigued about how you score. Like, how do you even approach composition and scoring for a movie at all? Like, what's the methodology? Is that unique to you? Is there like schooling that you've done on that specifically? How do you guys even decide like, okay, we should make a sound like this or whatever?
Most people go to school for it. I went to undergrad like for music. It was very loose. So I did learn a lot about like music theory and like, the technical skills that you need. But then after college, I don't know, the landscape has shifted a lot. It used to be very like orchestral and you write by hand and you write out the pieces that the orchestra plays for the piece. And that has changed a lot. And like some of the pioneers of that changing, I don't know if you remember the movie The Social Network. So Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross scored that movie, and this was like this big shift, at least for me. That was the movie where I listened to the music and I was like, I could do this. And it was, I'm sure it's not the first, but like a big upset because I think they won an Academy Award for it. And the score was all like synth based, and very, very like contemporary. And I think people were super pissed because they're like, this isn't film music. And now it's all shifted. There's a lot more people from my world, like band, indie music world, shifting into this landscape and doing more contemporary music scores instead of like orchestral scores. Also, budgets have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So you can't afford to hire an orchestra like with the budgets that you're given for most films. So you have to use technology in better ways. Oh yeah, play a clip of this. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm just like, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm like, wait, can you hear it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What jumps ahead? So intense. Okay, so like this is two people, but like they're literally sitting down on the keyboard kind of thing and planning this out is
I think
what we're suggesting.
Pretty much. Like a lot of it is sitting down and experimenting, coming up with the sound. So basically what we just did this past weekend, Kevin and I, like we have watched the rough cut of the movie. So the scenes are stitched together. It's not completely done. And we took that and we've read the script a bunch of times. And now we're in the stage where we're just coming up with ideas and creating like 2-minute pieces of music that we then send to the director. And she's like, yes, no, yes, no. Right. Later. And then you do a spotting session where you go through the entire film with the director and decide where the music actually needs to happen. Oftentimes people put way too much music into their cut because people like music kind of can save a movie in a certain way. And so what I usually find is in these spotting sessions, the director's like, okay, we're going to have music here and here and here and here and here. And we're like, why don't we take out like every third one? Like you don't need music, like let it breathe. And then from there, it's like a constant back and forth with the producers and directors on, we score scene by scene and you jump around. It's really confusing. I don't even know how to explain it. But it is trial and error. And eventually then, once you've written all this stuff and you do it all like in the computer, then you'll hire instrumentalists if you want to re-record the MIDI parts. So MIDI is like fake instruments in your computer, basically, that you play on your keyboard. And it can sound like a really crappy version of a cello, for example. And then you'll hire a real cello player to play over it, if that makes sense.
Right. But it's full on like actual composition. That's the thing that's really kind of just the method maybe has shifted to your point, but that's like actually really cool. Yeah. So then in this back and forth with the director, I'm just thinking about how much putting music to a video changes the emotional feel of the video. Like you watch the same clip 1 minute long with 10 different tracks to it, and it will feel differently. Like the track we just listened to from that movie, it's like, it feels intense immediately, but intense is even like too vague of a description. Right. So is that where the real talent is? Like what makes someone, when we're talking about like, okay, we want to get to 50-50 women like scoring stuff as well, from a pure talent question level. Yeah. What is it that makes someone really good at this? The people that you've mentioned that are like the juggernauts of the industry who are awesome at this, even this asshole that you could have learned from, but actually couldn't have. Like, why is that person, quote, a genius, to use your language? What makes them actually good?
Well, I think it's the emotional accessing emotions that can't be described. Like you just tried to describe that and you were saying this word I'm using is actually the word intense is too vague because there's something else happening there. But I think that is like the power of music just in general, and why we've been creating music, forever as humans, because it does access something that words don't. And I think that the best people in the industry are people who can really, really access that like emotion and aid a scene without taking over a scene. Letting, there's a balance. And it's definitely something that we've had to learn is when you're writing your own music that you're going to play on stage, you do whatever you want. It's all about the music. When you're scoring a film, it's about the film. It's not about you. It's so like, sometimes you have to like reel it back in because you think this like idea is so great, but it's not about that. It's about the emotion. So, but which is what's interesting about it is stereotypically the way that, as we talked about before, the way that we set up our culture, men are not supposed to be emotional, but somehow men are at the top of this industry where it's all about emotion in that sense. So I found that interesting. But.
Well, and maybe, I think everyone is emotional to the same level, just in different ways, but maybe that's the leverage point where women are going to be able to insert themselves faster into this industry is like better articulation and understanding on that sort of like emotional intelligence level of what's happening. Totally. It sounds like, a big part of this job is being able to really actually interpret what you're seeing, like reading the script and seeing the quick cut or whatever, and really being able to actually interpret what it's supposed to feel like and then match that. Is that
totally true? Yep. And I usually ask the director, like, what do you want? What am I supposed to feel right now? Like, what do you want people to feel right now? And like go below the dialogue and below all the action and just be like, what is the underlying emotion that you want people to feel? And then I take that and that's what I write off of.
That sounds tough.
Yeah. I think isn't. I don't know why it isn't. I mean, it is. You get into like jams and, I don't know. It feels very natural to me more than anything else. More than anything else, I guess, in life. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this is your talent. So, I mean, maybe it sounds tough to me, but maybe that's the thing. So, little does everyone know that actually in our Yogapreneur group, the Yogapreneur Collective, Terry, one of our coaches, keeps hounding Michelle to make like a little intro to it. We do like a weekly, we call it the roundup, where all the coaches jump on. We talk about what's been going on in the industry in the last week. We're trying to convince Michelle to score us an intro on it. We have no ability to actually play it or anything like that at this point, but we'll see. So you might have to join the YC to come and check out what we end up with there. Can you elaborate a little bit more on taking stuff out? Because as a yoga teacher myself, I relate to this in one of the best mentors I ever had. Because I taught a bunch of different styles of yoga, but mostly I taught Bikram yoga, which is heavily verbal instruction. And there's even a dialogue that's called that everyone has to learn to start. But what makes you better at teaching it, therefore, is your ability to deliver the dialogue in a particular way, and like to purposefully, consciously have a rhythm, and not talk in between postures, and sometimes do it. So, but the silence point is what's interesting to me, that it's like, one of my mentors really, she instilled in me the idea that like, actually, because you're talking so much, you have to stop talking sometimes and like really just allow the space to be silent. When it comes to scoring, because you're right, I would think like, movies are long, there must be a lot, but I'm thinking now about movies that I really have liked recently that I've watched. The one that's coming to mind is, the guy from Better Call Saul, that actor.
Yeah.
And Breaking Bad or whatever. He's called like, I don't know, normal guy, but he like gets in all these fights in it or whatever. But part of the reason the fight scenes are kind of cool is that like, you don't think that the dude should be able to fight, and he can. And two, there's no other sound. You just hear them hitting each other, which makes it like weirdly intense in a different way.
Yeah.
And there being like action movie music, like superhero. And that whole rant aside, the silence part of it and keeping that in balance. Can we elaborate on that? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's like it's so, you forget how important it is to like have contrast, I think. And like, without dark, there would be no light. Without silence, there would be no sound. Like you need to have the contrast to make anything good. Like you can't just have wall-to-wall music the whole time. And I think a lot of directors, especially early in the process, when they make their rough cut, they use what's called temp music, which is just, other people's music to like put into their rough cut of their movie before they hire their composer to explain what they want out of the sound, basically. And usually they're just like wall-to-wall music, just like music under all this dialogue, music. And that's when we come in and we're like, listen, like, your actors are good. Like they carried this scene. You don't need to pad it with all of this sound. So music can completely aid a scene. It can set the tone, but not using it is also a very important choice to set the tone and create that intensity by using sound design in that way too. Like sound design is a whole other thing that I don't understand at all, could never do. But there are these, I'm sure that scene that you're talking about with like the punching and hearing that like really an aggressive sound of like flesh on flesh, like hitting each other, that was created by a sound design artist who, really made that happen and created the intensity that you heard on the screen. So yeah, those are just, it's important to check your ego in a lot of ways and not want to score the entire wall to wall. But it's also important for like the creators of the project to like not use music as a crutch to like make it better, and to realize that like silence also can be just as effective as music if used correctly, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like the space between amplifies the impact then of when you do put it in, like then it's like noticed. So
see what you did there.
Accidental. You see what I did there? Yeah, accidental podcast pun. Yeah. Okay, so I have on the sort of entrepreneurial side, I'm thinking about like a practical tip for someone that would be listening to this, because now that I'm thinking about it as we're talking about this, it's like we use music all the time. I know people use music for like so that they can work, that like helps them concentrate. I know people that are using, you're using music in your video advertisements. You're using music when you teach a yoga or a HIIT class. Like a HIIT class is a great example. If the playlist is on fire, it's a totally different class than if it's a weak playlist. So from like a practical sense, if someone's like, okay, I have this video or I'm going to teach this class, and then they were going to go put music to it, is there something they should do or something they could look at or some like technique or some like thought process that they could go through that would help them make that better?
Well, in terms of like, structuring a class, whether it's yoga or HIIT or whatever, I think that is it's like so personal, but at the same time, you have to think about like your audience. I think in general, you have to think about your audience. So whether that's like the class you're teaching or the people that you're trying to cater to, in advertising, advertising music is so important, like so important. And I think it does get undervalued in a lot of ways. But finding a hook that really can draw in your audience, and like thinking about what your specific, depending on what you're advertising, what do they like? What is their, and you can kind of go through the same exercise that I go through when I'm talking to directors. It's like, what is the underlying emotion that I want my audience to feel when they see my advertisement for my yoga class? Like, do they want to feel warmth? Do they want to feel like safety? Do they want to feel excited? And then find a piece of music that matches that emotion. I think that is like the only way. Making a playlist for your class is completely different because you have to think about the ups and downs. You have to think about like the BPM, how fast, what are the reps that you're doing? Do you want to match it? Finding that, the perfect playlist for a HIIT class, as you were saying, is like the best thing ever, when you like the ups and downs and I think it's important to think about. That's why I do love Peloton, because they always have like
the music's on. Yeah.
But then you have to find, if you're doing advertising, I would recommend like hiring a composer to make that music for you. It does add, first of all, it's expensive to license music in general. And if you're going to spend that money anyway, you may as well hire someone to craft the music for you so that it is like completely on your, like on brand for your studio too. I don't know. That's what I would do.
It's an interesting thought. You're right. Like, it's like undervalued. Like, I think everyone understands conceptually the value of it, but it's undervalued in action. That's what I see. Because, you know, we've got studios or people that we've worked with, like they put $10,000-$20,000 into video to make a 1 to 3 minute video on something. But then do like Epidemic Sound or something and just pick a couple songs out, which is fine. Like, it works, but I never would have thought of like on that level. No, if you wanted to be 100% you, and like, this is such a high emotion, impactful element of it, get someone to compose specifically for it.
Yeah. And it's, you know, maybe you'll spend, it's interesting. You're right. It's like they spend 20,000 on a video and then they spend $100 on that music. And it's like,
right.
It's not, you know, there's so much more you can get out of, you know, there's stock music, and like, yes, these libraries are helpful and for low budget things, they're important, but like there are composers out there who would do it for, you know, a few thousand, like,
right.
And I think that's a worthy investment if you're already spending that kind of money, you know.
Right. Yeah. Once, if you're creating like an anchor video of some sort that you're going to use for years of time, so you have to amortize the cost over, you know, 2 or 3 years minimum.
Yeah.
Like this step shouldn't be missed then.
Yeah.
What an interesting thought. Now I want to do it. Okay. Well, so then maybe from a resource standpoint, like if that was interesting to someone's going to spend $5,000, $10,000, make like a really epic video that's going to be their anchor video, and then they're looking for a composer. I think that's often the block for entrepreneurs as well. It's like, okay, well, where do I go to find one? What's a good price supposed to be? How do I pick the right one? Like, I don't want to spend a bunch of money and then it sucks.
Right.
So from just like I don't know, bridging the gap between these professionals and these professionals, where would people go? Let's start with, where would you find one? Where would you even find a composer?
That's a good question. There's, you know,
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, it's like, it is hard as an independent, you know, small business owner. It's really hard to find. There is a missing piece in like the way that this industry works, and a lot of people go, you know, hire advertising companies to, you know, make these products for them, and they have the connection to the music houses. There are advertising music houses that do this kind of thing, but usually at a higher budget level, typically. I think, you know, there are, there's the here are a few. There's the AWFC, Alliance for Women Film Composers, where there are a ton of women working in this space who are looking for work and would be doing this kind of thing. There's this place called Free the Work, which is a similar thing. And it's, all of these places have like, kind of like directories on their websites with all these different like freelance composers. You can always do a posting like you would for any other job posting on Indeed or one of those sites, LinkedIn. Yeah, but there's definitely a missing link between like the independent business owner and the independent composer finding each other. Yeah. And then for pricing, like typically 1% of the budget of the film should go to the composer. So I think that it works for advertising too. Like 1% of your budget should probably go to the composer, right? Yeah.
I did make the calculation.
I know.
Okay, so that means there's probably a minimum bar that any composer would have as well, right? But if we're doing 5,000 on a video, that's only $50. So that's probably not right.
Right. That's not right. I'm thinking about like $9 million movies.
Right now, there's like 10 other composers be like, Michelle, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you talking about? Right. But the point, it's a good starting metric from like, if that's the top of a huge budget, then you're working backwards from there maybe. And I'm
if
sure
you're
everyone has a
spending
minimum
20K,
bar.
if you're spending $20,000 on your whole thing, I would allocate 2,000 of that to, so that's 10%, right? Or is that 1%? I can't do that. 10%. I would try to allocate at least $1,000 and see what you get. You do get what you pay for to an extent.
Right.
Like, you know,
right.
and if you're going to spend money on a videographer, I think you can, like, spending money on a composer would only elevate the product.
I like it. I want to change gears a little bit. I could be totally wrong. Maybe, like, I know that, like, playing music, if I play guitar or something, it is active in my body, right? Mm-hmm. But by the sounds of it, this type of work, and also you working as, the EA for me, like, it's a lot of more sedentary, concentrated work.
Yeah.
So tell me about how you stay healthy doing that then as well. Like, how do you not become the composer in the basement on the piano? And what's do you have like a routine that you follow? What's your thing?
Working out is a huge part of it, and making sure I move is a huge part of it. Like, I get stir crazy and I need to move. So I feel like working out at least once a day, going, like, taking breaks, walking away. I'm definitely good at, well, this might not be a superpower, it might be a flaw, but my brain, after like an hour of any concentrated work at all, it just turns off. It's like, you're done. And so, like, between 1 to 2 hours, and then I've started to learn to listen to that instead of like pushing through, and just take like a 15-minute break, go outside, get sun on your face, walk around the block, come back, sit back down. And it's like, then I can go again. Those are important. And then also, like, we were talking about this last night, Kevin and I, because we went out and had drinks with a couple friend of ours. And we were like, we don't really have time to do this right now, but it's so important. I'm an extrovert. And this is such solitary work, which is why I love working with my partner, because it's like, otherwise, he definitely pushes me to do more and do better. And working alone is hard for me as an extrovert. So making sure I do schedule in time to, like, see friends, be out in the world. There's a lot of composers who don't do that and are very, like, the basement composer mentality of, like, I will not leave until I get this done. And that's just, like, not a healthy, I don't see that being a long-term way for me to live my life. So
yeah.
Well,
I think that you're raising a good point in that, like, I mean, of course, to each their own, whatever works for you. I think we all are wired a little differently that way, but just, like, there's such a hustle and grind conversation there's a lot of counterculture to it right now, but in any industry, in the same thing, you've got all this work to do and sit down and whatever, but it's like, if you don't take these breaks, if you don't, feed your emotional self positively through socialization and et cetera, then, like, are you really going to be as effective doing that anyways? So by the sounds of it. So
totally.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's your workout?
I do Peloton every other day, and then I do Tracy Anderson every other day.
Yeah, Tracy Anderson.
I'm obsessed.
Okay, let's go. I have to go down the rabbit hole because we have a lot of, like, fitness wellness people, right? That, and the yogis that listen to this. But how do we end up Peloton? Okay, fine. But, like, how do we end up at Tracy Anderson? What's the
I'll tell you.
Why?
Here's why. I used to be a dancer. I was, I did, like, ballet and jazz and hip hop and all the things for up until I graduated from college. And I never found a workout that, like, did the same thing as dance. Like, it didn't, like, I tried bar and I was like, this is not fun. Like, this hurts. I did a lot of yoga as well. And then the pandemic came and I was like, I need movement. And I finally was like, you know what, I'm going to invest in Tracy Anderson. It's really expensive, but I'm going to do it. And I fell in love with it. It's like the movements are it's so dance based, and she doesn't talk, which in her study that she did, like, prove that people burn more calories or whatever, which I don't necessarily agree with, but whatever. I get just as much. I feel like I'm burning the same amount from Peloton where they're constantly telling you what to do. But yeah, it's just a different type of workout, and it's very like, you have to listen to your body, and you like have to drop in, and there's just music and movement and nothing else. And I find it very fun and challenging. And yeah, that has been.
How much I'm on Tracy Anderson's website right now. Here, I'll bring it up on the screen for anyone who's watching the video version of this. But like, okay, cool. So like dance based, you said it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
How much is it?
It's like $90 a month for online, but it's unlimited online, whatever.
Right.
Her studio stuff, I've only been to like one live class. It's like, I feel like it's like $55 or $60 a class. And then like, if you want to be a member, it's like $900 a month or something. It's
really
high end. Yeah. I mean, and that's
holy cow. This picture is,
yeah.
This is bananas.
So, I mean,
apply like, for membership.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's really bougie, but it's,
Right.
But the online studio is definitely way more accessible and like worth it to me.
But still $90, like that's a yoga membership in most of the United States.
Right.
Like an in-person in the studio yoga membership.
Yeah, unlimited. Yeah. Like, yeah.
So, okay, dance and like good workout, dance, which you have background in that you enjoy. So like it's an enjoyment. And then you said fun was your word as well. Mm-hmm. So that value proposition of like, this is how you work. So then you have the convenience of doing it at home. And then this is also like interesting and fun. That's why this.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I find the whole thing really fascinating because we have so much conversation around like, what should I charge for my virtual class? What should I do virtual classes or whatever? And it's like, there's no should or shouldn't do anything. You should, do what you think is right for your business and what you're interested in. But from the consumer centric viewpoint,
yeah, like
it's got to be good, but good is
yeah
very opinionated, obviously. But it's right. Like you need an angle. I guess that's my interpretation of what you're saying. Peloton's the same thing. Like there's an angle. There's what you're getting. There's a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like fun in a certain way. It's not just the workout itself. It's the other elements that play into it.
Like I just did a Peloton class and Lizzo was there. Like
right.
She was on a bike, and then like she was like singing on the bike, and all her dancers like this is the first time they've done this, but like, and I saw it on Instagram and I was like, I gotta take that class. Like I like ran to the bike to take the class. Like
you totally fangirl Lizzo all of a sudden.
Oh, of course.
Heck yeah.
It was just like, and they keep like one-upping themselves in these ways and doing these like artist classes, and I think anyone who does a lot of like music centric workouts is something that I obviously gravitate towards. That's
yeah. Well, surprise. I mean,
shocking.
Yeah. I'm just thinking right now for the yogis listening, like yoga and music have been intertwined for a very long time, but not in the same way exactly, and a lot of the way music is placed in yoga classes now wouldn't be quote traditional. That's a whole conversation. What is traditional yoga? But like, it's actually bringing the music back into the conversation, and then why something like Tracy Anderson's interesting, or Peloton, like it really is like fundamentally an element that makes an online only program be, $90 and like ups the ante on this stuff quite a bit. So I like it. Well, I know we're all off the cuff today. This has been really fascinating. Let's sort of wrap it together a little bit. But you alluded way earlier, you told the story about this creepo or whatever. Other than that, like as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I think other entrepreneurs don't talk about enough is what failure looks like. So you've organically arrived here, but like take us to a moment where in hindsight, you're like, that was a total flop moment of my career and stuff. And what did you do to get out of that?
It's such a good question, because it's like, I with the indie music world that I kind of used to be in, I could say that the entire 8 years of me doing that was a failure, because I did not succeed in making money from that music. I did not succeed in like that becoming my career. So I could say that that was a complete failure, but it wasn't, because everything I learned from that time, all the things I taught myself when it came to like music production and even like performing and all of that, led me to being able to compose for film. And without that foundation, I wouldn't have been able to do this job. So it's like, it was a pivot that I had to take. And it kind of happened when the pandemic hit. It was happening for like the year before the pandemic hit. I was burnt out. I felt like my music wasn't doing well on, Spotify and all the things. And I was trying to play shows, but like you can only play so many shows to the same audience, and people, as they get older, stop going out as much. And it was just, I was hitting this place where I was like, what the fuck happened? Like I was doing so much better earlier in my 20s. And I feel like I've just like I've been plateauing, but then at the same time, like almost going down, and I don't understand why. And I don't even really want to do this whole performing thing. And like, what am I doing? And the pandemic hit, and I realized that like, I don't want to perform anymore. Everybody was talking about how much they missed performing. And I was just like, I feel relief. Like, why do I feel relief that I don't have to do this anymore? Like there's something wrong here. And so instead of, it took a few months, but like during that time, I decided to pivot completely. I'd already been scoring things and doing indie films, but I was like, I'm way more excited to wake up in the morning to do that than I am to wake up in the morning and try to write music that I can then perform on stage and all of that. So it was a slow burn of a failure that I decided to, instead of like sink into and be like, I quit, I'm done, I just like pivoted the way that I was approaching music and the way that I'm showing up in this industry, I guess.
Well, and it sounds like, follow the dopamine, follow your passion a little bit too, like just being able to really take stock of that and kind of own it. Okay. Last two questions for today. This is a weird one, but I like to just throw it into the mix. So as an entrepreneur specifically, weird belief, tactic, controversial opinion on entrepreneurship that you hold, or that you're like, what's the hill you're willing to die on sort of thing as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, one thing as an entrepreneur, I mean, there's so many things. I don't know if this is a weird
there's too many.
I don't know if this is a weird belief or if this is just normal, but like, I think I remember my mom saying to me once that like stay power has a lot more to do with success than you think. Like the people who stick to it and like keep going and stay in the game and not, like don't give up has so much more to do with success than we give it credit for. But that also means listening to yourself and knowing when to pivot in your career and in your entrepreneurial journey. So that was one. But then, God, the other thing is, I guess this is a hill that I am willing to die on, and it's not a fun one, is that like luck has a lot to do with success, at least in the entertainment industry. And luck can be who you know, your connections, like where you're from, happenstance, chance, like and it's like, it's shitty because but it's true. Like so much of at least success in the entertainment industry has to do with luck and chance and who you know. So I guess networking is such a huge, important part of entrepreneurship so that you can kind of beat the odds. But yeah.
I've heard that statement before, and I find it interesting because I don't know if I 100%, like certainly luck plays into success as an entrepreneur. There are many people I know that have been what I would call lucky. Not that they didn't put hard work in, but like they've like hit it big, but it's like they fluked out on the timing of something or whatever else.
Yeah.
My follow-up question to that would be then, how does that tie into like, as an entrepreneur, like Yeah, working on it, purposefully moving to LA because it's like the
Yes.
epicenter for where this has to happen, and purposefully networking. Or like on the let's take it into the ethereal side, it's like manifesting your reality. And how does that connect in if it's just blind luck? Like you happen to whatever walk into the right coffee shop or whatever, you know?
Yeah, it's like giving yourself the best odds by doing everything in your power to, amplify your luck. So I think that does mean like the networking element sucks so much. Like my mom was an entrepreneur, and she was like, actually she was a small business coach. And her whole thing was networking. Like, you need to be networking, you need to be networking, you need to be, and it was like, it was a lot. And now, but now I'm like, yeah, you need to be networking. That's the only way to meet people. That is the only way. And like, it's so hard to do, but reaching out to someone to get coffee has been a huge part of where we've gotten to today in Hollywood. It's like, people do want to talk about themselves. People do want to help you. Like, most people are good. Not everyone, but like there is a lot of assholes, but like most people want to explain their journey and want to, people like to talk about themselves. And if you give someone the opportunity to do that by asking them to, like, can I buy you a coffee and, hear about how you got to where you are, most people will say yes to that and give you either advice or connection that can help you down the road. But it does take a ton of outreach and not being too scared to reach out to people, basically. But I think that's the only way to beat the odds with luck.
Networking is such a like old school business
I know.
Wording, right?
Yeah.
But it is the right word. If I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, it's like, yeah, luck is an element of this, but you can hedge your bets. Like, you have to also create opportunity for luck to fall into your lap a little bit around this stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like so many, I mean, we could go on a whole rabbit hole on this, but like so many entrepreneurs that I meet, and I've been guilty of this throughout the years, off and on at one moment or next. It's like, we're waiting for some external force to make us do something, to make us pivot. Like the best example recently, working so much in the yoga industry, is you can go back. I've got videos in our private group and stuff too, talking about why and how we should be developing VOD and figuring out your live stream setup and stuff like that, way before the pandemic was even a conversation at all, because it was so obvious that like we're moving towards a digital culture and that this is an easy way for you to increase the value of your brand. And pre-pandemic, there were a few studios that were like small kind of hole in the wall places, but they were hitting it pretty good and had like a whole second revenue stream just because they saw that and did it. The point being, most studios didn't have to do that. So then once the pandemic hit, there was this external force that forced them to do it. And now we've recalibrated the whole industry where it's like, I wouldn't say you have to have VOD or live stream now if you're running, boutique fitness or wellness business. But if you're not, the question would be, why wouldn't you? Like,
right.
Not should or shouldn't you, but why wouldn't you? Because it increases the value of what you offer. That's a whole rabbit hole. But it's this external force element that like you do have to participate in creating opportunity for yourself and kind of going for it as well.
Yeah. And it's hard because you can get sucked into, there's so many different ways to go for it. There's so many like things that I should be doing online that I'm like not doing. And I have gone down the different rabbit holes of like what's trendy and what I should be doing with social media, or what I should be doing with, trying to pitch my music for commercials, or what I should be. And you can get into these different rabbit holes that like, if you're not, I would say like pick one of the platforms maybe to invest your energy in, but it's a full-time job to keep those things up a lot of the time. And I don't know, with at least part of the reason I got burnt out with like the indie music world is I had to be on social media all the time. And like, you're supposed to be posting every day. And it's like, well, what am I posting about every day? There's nothing to, because it's a front facing thing whereas I found myself in a different world where it's just not as important, which is nice. But it's hard.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's like, I always think, I did a video on my TikTok channel yesterday, actually commenting a little bit about this, the idea of like Kriya Yoga and singularity of focus. Mm-hmm. It's like at some point for entrepreneurial success, you have to realize what the most impactful thing is that you could do. Like, what's the biggest domino? What's the biggest rock? What's the thing that you need to do? Yeah. And then you just need to fucking do that thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, the more focused, the way that we sort of word it is like, your success is directly proportionate to your ability to focus on the most important things.
Right. 100%.
Because there are a million things you could do at any point in time. So it's not doing a million things, it's doing the right things for you right now. And maybe that's where the skill is interpreting what is the right thing for you to do right now.
And that's something we've been talking about, like in your business, is zooming out and maybe every week coming up with that one thing that will help move the needle the most. And like, that is the number one priority. Everything else is secondary. I think that it can apply to all entrepreneurs, honestly. And like in my field too, like, what is the one thing this week? It's
what's the thing that we can do and just put full steam behind. Makes sense to me. All right, last question for today. Michelle today meets Michelle 10 years ago. Knowing what you know now about entrepreneurship, business, music, all the stuff, what would you tell past Michelle?
I would, oh my God, Wednesday, stop. Sorry, my cat is scratching our couch. I don't know if you guys can. Oh, there she is. This is a raw podcast.
Get your cat declawed immediately because they will mess up your nice couch.
That's illegal now in the US. I don't know what you guys do in Canada and Mexico, but
I don't know. I'm so old school. I have no idea.
Maybe it's state by state.
Is it really illegal?
It's illegal because apparently
I'm looking it up. I don't believe it.
It is. It's illegal, at least in the state of New York, and I think in California.
Declawing a cat,
because it basically is like cutting their fingers. Apparently,
United States declawing is outlawed in Austin, Denver, City of St. Louis County, Pittsburgh, Madison. Is outlawed in 8 California sites: West Hollywood, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Berkeley, Beverly Hills, Culver City. There's a Burbank. Okay, well. So
I could drive.
You learn something new, right? Okay, don't tell past you to declaw your cat and send yourself to jail. That doesn't make sense.
That would be bad. I would tell past me to just keep going. I don't have any regrets about what happened over the past 10 years. I think like the only thing I regret is how much mental anguish there was and how stressed I was. And so I think I would just say like, it works itself out. It all works itself out. And you just have to keep going and try to lower your stress levels in whatever way you can, because that is a waste of energy.
I think it's good advice for anyone. Just you're right. Just keep going. The stress is coming from internal,
right?
Like
you're making that
of your environment.
Right. You're making that stress within yourself. Like it doesn't exist without you. So it's you gotta let it go.
Okay. If someone is like, now I'm inspired and I want to support, woman composers, or I want to get in touch with Michelle Birsky, or I want to hire you to score my Facebook video ad or my whatever, my anchor video on my website, where do we send them? Where should they go to?
Instagram is probably the best place. Michelle Birsky on Instagram. And then our website is Birsky-Henthorn.com. I think.
Things we should be doing.
Yeah.
We're looking it up right now.
Literally looking at my own website. Yeah, Birsky-Henthorn. Yes, that is correct. I was right. But yeah, find me on Instagram at Michelle Birsky. That's easier. Just DM me.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you the link. I'll look up my own link and send it to you. All right, Michelle, thanks so much for jumping on. Very interesting conversation today.
Very impressive.
Your story's inspiring, but also like, I think we did well for just an off the cuff role here. But also just like super intriguing. I feel like it's good for people to know how other industries work, because it's different than ours, and it like changes some perspective on what's possible and everything. So a lot of our conversation is good for that. If you guys are watching this after the fact, if it's on video, obviously leave us a comment down below. If you're watching or listening, that is, on any regular streaming services, make sure that you are subscribing and following along. That was it for Amplify Your Impact today.